This is kind of the first time that we get to do this, that I've had this opportunity, and this is the SHOT Show 2024 first episode of the Redacted Culture Cast, and I've got more people in my room that I thought I could handle. And before the jokes get rolling, just go and introduce yourself, so I'm not going to completely butcher the rest of the story. Go ahead.
All right.
Blue Man Group.
Blue Man Group playing above me. I'm Collin Underdahl.
Yep.
I forgot the rest.
We've talked before.
Oh, yeah.
Luke Brown.
Yep.
Yep.
Tom Beatty. Yep.
Jake Knight with GRIDBASE. Justin Anderson, CS for Modlite.
Okay. So we've got Modlite guys here, we've got me, we've got grid-based people here. And so, as the saying goes, I have been human trafficking people into my apartment, into my unit here. But as far as SHOT Show going this year, one of the conversations that I kind of asked this question out to the community before we got started about like what do people want to see in SHOT Show, and we got some answers from the guests and not the guests. We get some answers from the community, and then I want to hear some of you guys' takes on that as well. But as far as this year, like how many times have you been to SHOT Show, and how do you approach it?
3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I approach it from work.
Yep.
But the products, honestly, are like the most boring part for me. It's the conversations, even though they're tiring.
You know, this is my first year at SHOT Show, and I think one of the strangest aspects is that given all of the hype surrounding 2024 and everything else, it's really eerie that everything's just like happening business as usual for the industry, you know, and that there's not... It didn't seem like, I mean, of course, we all had our own private conversations, and I'm sure there was thousands of other private conversations that were had about whatever 2024 has in store, but it is kind of strange that we all have some underlying knowledge or underlying feeling about the potentiality of 2024 to be a catalyst for whatever's coming after it and for people to continue on just buying and selling as usual. You know, I guess in some aspect it's comforting because then these businesses are going to be able to support whatever they need to support then thereafter. But on another aspect, it's like just weirdly unsettling how normal everything is.
Are you saying that? Are you saying that like Are you saying that the tension that you're picking up from the crowd, let's just call it,
The lack of tension.
The lack of tension. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the lack of tension. There's not. It's just. It seems. You know, again, first year, right?
Yeah.
So nothing to compare it to. For a fresh take, but yeah, just the lack of tension. Just showing up, and it seems like everybody's here to work and, you know, get things done, and it's on some level it's comforting. it's like cool. Yeah. It is what you make it, and we're all just making it normal until it's not, and on some level it's comforting, but then there's just this eeriness that's just like, this might be the last bit of normalcy for a while, you know, and it's, what does SHOT Show 2025 look like for us? That's something that's been racking for me while I'm here. I'm like, will we be SHOT Show 2025, and how's that going to look? Mm-hmm. You know, nobody knew what was going to happen SHOT Show 2019, and then, you know, everything that ensued after that, and in the positive and in the negative. You know, but yeah, just I can't help but look at it without the juxtaposition of what's impending, if anything. You know.
Are you saying that because you think the election year uncertainty of that, or like
cyclical? Yeah, election year always produces really interesting results for the gun industry, whatever it is, whether it's ammo shortages or just whatever. You know, so yeah, I mean election year in general, but then of course up against a very interesting election year. Mm-hmm. You know, and
that's I think what's the unsettling part is the uncertainty of this election. Like, I think the dirty little secret of the gun industry is that everyone kind of looks at election years as almost a good thing. Mm-hmm. And you get excited because it means, the 4-year drought is over.
Right. Well, you can stoke the fire real fast, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, right?
Right.
And so I have to agree with you. I mean, this is my 3rd SHOT Show, and it's been... I see it from, like Collin said, like, a lot of the products coming from, like, inside the industry, like, a lot of the products that were coming that everyone's raving about online right now, I was, like, texted a photo of them, a month ago.
Okay.
And so
I guess that might be a little bit weighted in that opinion, too, is, like, the products are, like...
Like, the products are not... It's what everyone gets excited about for, everyone wants to see what the innovation is, but it's very common that you'll hear people say, you know, SHOT Show is about the people that come, and I think that this podcast happening is exactly why I like coming to SHOT Show.
Yeah.
Because meeting, you know, you guys, we met at SHOT Show,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a phenomenal way for people in all different. I mean, we're all coming from very different aspects of the industry,
Right.
but it's this melting pot that somehow gets people from different walks of life to come and just click.
Right.
Yeah, there seems to be like an impression, and I'm guilty of this too. Even looking back on my own experience of like what life is like having on the inside of SHOT Show and on the outside of SHOT Show. And so like I remember being younger and seeing, again, very focused on the products and almost exclusively on the things that were coming out. And we're going to get to innovation in a second. But then as soon as I got here, like I think I did 1 year where I was just looking at a lot of stuff, and then after that it completely moved to the people. And I think some of that exclusivity does play into it, because when you're in what people refer to as the industry, which I think is kind of funny that almost sounds like it's reinventing somewhere that we wanted to move away from, which is like the in-group versus out-group preference. Like SHOT Show is still a relic of that old time where you have to have credentials and you have to prove that you're in the industry to be a part of it.
I think though, like, so within the industry, like Luke said, like you might have gotten, like if you're in the right position, you might have gotten already texted a photo of what's coming out. It's not that they can't be in, but there is, and it's not that it's gate kept like you've talked about before, but it's the reason why I think I've always looked at from a people side of things is more from the aspect of a job. And like I want to do good at what I'm doing, which is like my job, which is like the opportunities that I see, and that's through the people that I can actually work with versus some new widget or gadget or gun that I truly don't probably need. And I think the outside looks at it as like, oh, SHOT Show, everyone who goes there goes and looks at everything new. And honestly, the first year I went was like, who can I actually make myself worth being in front of to spark conversations, to start things that I know we're looking at doing and get those conversations rolling, even if it's just a like, hey, I'm Collin, I'm working at, like, we're looking at this, or we would like to do that, or we like this thing of your product. And there's a level of trust that needs to happen in order to truly be able to be in those positions in the industry, in order to be in the industry. There's a lot of people in the gun world and in the market and in the industry itself, but at a certain level, like, the connections of people are usually based on your merit of trustworthiness and your ability to do your job versus like knowing the little niche nuances of every single release that comes out.
I think we're touching on something too here that we briefly spoke about at dinner, which is that like there was a craze of gadgetry and all that kind of stuff, and then people got more focused on building dedicated loadouts and becoming more conscious about focused equipment, versus just like having the new thing all the time. And where now people have those loadouts, and for folks like ourselves, like we're kitted up, and it's more about a kit of the mind at this point, and a kit of community, and we're building ad hoc networking and infrastructure things. And so like the being on the cutting edge of whatever's at SHOT Show, as cool as it may be, we're kind of further when you're catching that wave of the tide, we're like on the beginning of the rip of like independent ad hoc infrastructure networks that will never be at the industry level, because the whole purpose of that kind of stuff is for it to be decentralized and for it to be independently made. And so I think too, like the disenchantment with the products, this is my first year, this is y'all's third year, we all have different perspectives from this, but my disenchantment with the product is like, I'm good. I've got my kit. The stuff that I need now, I have to make. The stuff that I need now that's going to benefit me and my community is stuff that I have to put together. No one is putting it together for me. So You know, the most exciting thing I saw today was the wave relay stuff. But that was because they were building ad hoc infrastructure networking turnkey systems, you know? And so like that was the stuff to me that, of course, I'm focused in communications and all of that. Of course, it's if you're a gun buyer, you have a gun store or whatever, well then you have a totally different lens to be looking at this. But I'm here for the people, like you said, in the culture, and I think in general, like the culture, as it were, or the industry, which I'm not in, is loaded out and kitted up, and we did that after 2020, and now it's like building community and infrastructure in that regard. On one part of the color wheel of people at SHOT Show, which is obviously a very colorful color.
Very busy.
You know?
Yeah. There's
colorful.
I was realizing today as I was walking out that despite the fact that I knew people that I was in the different crowd, I almost was not noticing an entire cast of people, and that is like, and because I was walking from one side to the other because it's a big space, probably to pick somebody up or find somebody, and as I was walking for the first time, I recognized that I was completely filtering out a certain entire group of people, and that's kind of like the fuddly category. Now, don't get me wrong. What I mean by that is like most people over 60 or over 50, and then there was kind of a shocking moment of going, yeah, but that's not what you're here for.
Right.
And then it was an interesting way because there was all those little cast groups and little bits like that.
Forrest, how many shots have you been to?
This is my fourth.
Fourth one?
My first time I went was in 2015, and it felt very different back then. Now that was also because it was entirely novel for me. My first time was in 2015, and then I went in 2021, 22, and 23. Or let's see, 22, 23, 24. Okay. So
What happened between 15 and 22?
what happened between 15 and 22, and by my assessment, is you saw the rise of what Nate and Isaac were talking about on the Art and War podcast, on like the difference between second and third generation gun culture. So in their description, so you saw a market shift between 15 and 22. From my observation, was 15 was a lot about celebrities and AR-15s.
Yeah.
And then 22 was much more about all of these other different things. And the example of it was, what were big things going on in 2015? Chris Costa, war sport. For me, at least. And now Chris Costa's gone on to do his own thing.
I was a liberal in 2015. I have no idea. I was anti-gun in 2015. So yeah, we've come
That,
full.
I'm curious
Come
about
around.
that.
Yeah, no, I voted for Obama. You know, it was like a whole thing. Yeah, I was off the rails there.
But
for
I
a
was
second.
also much younger. And
Yeah.
much crazier.
Yeah, crazy shit, man.
man. Out there, just in case there was a little bit of residue in there.
Yeah. No, we've cleared out all the residue. We shook it up. We're good now. But yeah, I have no idea what gun culture is doing in 2015.
Yeah, 2015 was like kind of, I wouldn't say the peak nor the end of it, but it was a certain moment where, or a certain time where, like the technology and the equipment that was going in, the technology and innovation that was going into AR-15s was not seen as much on the exterior, but on the molecular level, as accurate barrels were becoming standardized, functioning gas systems, functioning expectations and all that, rails were starting to get longer, and that was sort of the final years where you went from the A2 flash hider or the A1 front sight post all the way into full free floating rails, from the competition shooter to the military application to the individual. So that was kind of the end of that era, and then I actually left gun culture for a couple of years, and by the time I came back, Faro concepts existed, Spiritus systems came around, and in 15 it was
I wasn't a liberal anymore.
Well, you became a human being.
Yeah,
you
Faro
did.
concepts, coming about is what ended my liberalism. I was like, all right, cool, we need this shit.
Was it the changing of the spelling from
Yeah.
the PH to the F?
Yeah, it was.
I graduated high school. That's great.
I'm so old.
Jeez, I was like in the Marine Corps and stuff.
Yeah, I had left the military already, and I had done some contracting. So there was but I think that's been an interesting shift as far as people for their as far as the equipment and gear, some of that is coming from me and my own attention, but I think in between that time, you also saw not necessarily the rise of the striker fire pistol, but it was just completely ubiquitous by the end.
Yeah.
And so in 13, 14, 15, companies were coming out with their striker. You had the SIG P320. I can't remember which one Walther came out with it. PDQ, yeah.
Yeah.
You had SIG and Walther, and Smith & Wesson was coming out with their 2.0 by then, and Glock was, of course, I think they were on their 4th generation by then. And
All the ones that came out were supposedly Glock killers.
Yeah, it was that. And then when I came back in 2022, I noticed a lot. I considerably noticed less person walking around with an entourage. That was like everywhere in 2015. Everywhere I'd go, there'd be somebody walking by with like an entourage of people, and that like I haven't seen that since, with exceptions. I haven't really seen it since.
Liver King. Liver King had an entourage. And
so everyone here saw Liver King but me.
Yeah, and he had like a Terran Tactical bodyguard. There was a guy that was wearing like a Terran Tactical, I just saw it on his thing, and the whole time he was like running ops for Liver King. He was like looking at everybody, and it was like, it was kind of interesting, and I was impressed with Liver King's ability to stay focused on being a personality without looking at all the people looking at him. I thought that was really interesting. He's been so used to it at this point. Like, I don't know that I could do that.
I think he's just fully living it.
Good for him. Yeah. Somebody was like, "What is Liver King doing here?" I'm like, "Making content and killing it."
Yeah.
That's his job. So he's doing well.
Yeah.
Getting attention.
Yeah. And he brought the Liver Queen with him. Whatever, dude. Let's go. And he completely bodied the entire
tribal gang.
Yeah, the tribal gang, dude. And he completely bodied all the allegations of the, and he said, I am on steroids, and we're like, good, dude. You look great.
Like I said on our half-hour walk here. Men yearn for the pack.
Men yearn for the pack, dude. Oh God,
you instigated it. I blame you.
Yeah. That was good leadership. I appreciate that. I didn't realize I was yearning for the pack, but I needed a good mile walk.
You need a good mile walk with questionable alleyways.
Yeah.
Broken glass. And,
Yeah, maybe feel alive.
A weird dude just crouching on his phone at the intersection. He was waiting. Hold on.
Okay, for context,
he was waiting
for
the crosswalk. That man was kneeling on the corner and was like on his phone, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, I can legally walk now." It's like, bro.
Yeah. We ate dinner, and then there was like a car snafu and an Uber question, and then Collin made the great leadership decision that men yearn for the pack, and we would be good for a ruck, and so we hoofed it back to the hotel. That's what there was all kinds of interesting things along the way.
Nothing like a brisk walk.
Yeah, brisk
walk.
walk.
Okay, Tolkien.
Clear the
We're
mind.
good, Tolkien. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, you added.
One to talk. Wow.
I was gonna say you added to the Tolkien vibe with your pipe just.
There was a time in my life where I watched Lord of the Rings and I thought Aragorn was the character, and now I'm all Gandalf. Like, that's who I want to be when I'm 37.
I have a question that redacted people would be interested in.
Okay.
How did Forrest find the smoking pipe, the tobacco pipe?
Like, how did I start smoking?
Yeah, like what origin story?
Thank you for asking. When I was a child, the only time my dad ever smoked a pipe was when we'd go fishing.
Okay.
And there was one year where he took me on this big fishing trip, just him and I up into Canada, and it was a great time and everything was wonderful. But then on the way back, we got pulled over by like the Canadian version of a park ranger, and we didn't really know about it, but the rules had changed. So we had they took all our fish and a bunch of our tackle, and they confiscated all the stuff. It was really not very fun. But when we'd go fishing, my dad would always smoke a pipe. And so on my second deployment in the military, I was dealing with peak homesickness and nostalgia for because it was a difficult deployment for us. I was kind of grasping at something to stabilize amidst all the chaos.
Oh.
So I found the tobacco shop that my dad used to get tobacco from, and I had it shipped out, and I had a pipe shipped out, and I broke the pipe and lost the pipe and all this other kind of stuff. But like that's how it started,
Interesting.
and that's how I started smoking a pipe.
Is that the same shop you get tobacco from now?
Most when I'm in Minnesota, yes, and while I've lived in Minnesota, yes, I always get the same tobacco from him, and then if I have to get it otherwhere, I've figured out the general nature of the blend and almost down to like where the tobacco comes from. But yeah, so it's the only thing I've been autistically good about. Everything else has just been chaos.
Nice. That's actually a cooler story than I was expecting.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never even thought to ask. I thought it was pointed to ask. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
It was nostalgia for home. The only time my dad ever smoked was when we were fishing, and I was on deployment, and it's like, I'm gonna start smoking a pipe.
Yearning for nostalgia is such a thing. You know, yearning for things that seemed really. We were talking about Polaroids earlier.
Yeah.
You could I would delete every photo on my phone today and keep every Polaroid in my collection. You know, and I'd be devastated if my Polaroids lit up. You know, so just in general, yearning for something real. You know, and something tangible that harkens back to some memory like that. You know, I'm sure we dug through a Polaroid at some point and found a picture of our granddad or whatever. It is seared deep in our mind, but yeah, it's a thing. It's interesting.
It is a bit of a sentimental thing. Yeah. So, and then one thing led to another, and I've been smoking ever since.
Now you're addicted to nicotine.
Completely. Well, it was that, or it was dip, or it was...
sponsored by Zen. We're sponsored by Zen.
Am I supposed to say, all right, Tucker? Where are the shades? Where are the sunglasses? Yeah.
So, to tie on what you just said, I feel like, to bring us back to gun culture question, that you mentioned how we've got this kind of like, the community's kind of kitted up, and most guys, I mean, there's, like we said, there's always kind of newcomers, but guys are, by and large, starting to shift a focus towards, okay, I have this stuff, now how do I use it? How do I use it with others? Why? I mean, Forrest and I have dug into that of like, okay, I've got all this stuff, but why did I even buy it in the first place? Maybe some of that's that, but you just mentioning like having something tangible and a meaning to it, I think is a huge part of what this next phase or evolution in gun culture is going to be. It's going to be a removing of, like Forrest said earlier, like the entourages, the internet clout, the celebrities, the hyperfixation on
clout.
The hyperfixation on status and gear quality and all this, and it's going to shift more towards the tangible, the people, the actual places, the actual skill sets.
Yeah. I think that happens too when you have more nodes. It's like every time someone gets activated in anything, like so in my industry, radio or whatever, like if I activate you on radio, you're going to activate somebody else.
Yeah.
So now because everyone's been activated with how to properly handgun fundamentals or building kit or anything like that, you have that many more nodes out there to where the people that we used to have to hold in this high regard to get information from because they were the only ones that were disseminating that, now like I disseminate that on a regular basis to my peer group. So I think too, as you have more nodes, it naturally lends itself to what you're talking about, the community. We don't have to prop up these clout gods to give us information in agnosticism and like peek behind the veil. It's like real people are doing real things, and I can ask my friend. You reach out, 1 in 10 people's going to know how to kit your rifle out.
I also think that, I mean, if you look back at like marketing back then, like, and then who was in it, it was just like, now it's so clear that so many of those people just literally sold you shit.
Shield.
Like, yeah, like, and some, not every single one of them maybe had the worst intention in their mind, but at one point in time, like, there are things that have come and passed that are like dark secrets in the closet now that like people remember, but now it's like, well, you see, I mean, Liver King's a good example of it, but you see these people who like, they build this portfolio publicly of like people grasping for them to say something, and then they're realizing like it doesn't have any meaning.
How's it cards?
It's literally just, you know, and it's not whimsical, but you can tell that when there's a narrative shift, it's almost like they get a call and say, they're like, no, we're not on that anymore.
Right. Media literacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And more people have tuned into, just like the mass amount of media that there is. It's really hard to hide if you're just selling something, because if you're trying to sell something every single time, like your audience, unless you're really savvy at it, your audience is going to pick up on, like, the only cue I get when I watch one of his videos is not to go out and actually make friends and train. It's, oh, he wants me to go to this website and buy something.
This, buy that, yeah.
With that, we're gonna take a break, and we'll be back in a second here. But we'll start back up on SHOT Show and then moving on to culture.
Why does it get so much fun as soon as the cameras turn off? You know, it's. You thought this was your podcast? Surprise! Hey, we're talking watches. Welcome to the Recon Team Watch Blog. We're. So if you bump it, it only goes.
I heard something about how watches
that's
were
why
getting next year. Weren't you guys talking about that? Someone was like, you were buying.
I always wondered because I was
watches
like,
were like.
what is it?
I've noticed. I've noticed that so many more people are wearing. Guys wear watches again. Like the watches made a comeback. The
watches certainly made a comeback. Yeah.
I realized it. My first SHOT Show. This is a lesson that I learned in SHOT Show. Was I never really understood why guys would wear a nice watch or why guys would wear these niche watch brands. And I learned that it is one of the biggest hacks to breaking the ice in a business setting. It is the men's version.
What did we do as soon as you sat down?
It's the men's version of like, what handbag is that? Or like, I don't know what women ask each other.
Right.
But like,
what do women ask each other?
We don't know women. We're all here. Just 6 dudes in a room.
6 men.
Which is basically SHOT Show. You're like, oh, look, a bunch of dudes in a room.
But like, it's the icebreaker for guys.
Yeah, definitely.
It's,
for me too, it's the final. It's either the first or the last thing I put on when I'm getting dressed. It either defines the outfit I'm about to put on, or it gets me ready for the outfit I've put on. But like, I very much choose a watch based upon an event. Like I chose the watches.
oh no!
Thank you for not
ass naked, dude. Watch on.
Naked. You're like over the watch is like.
Am I not ass naked? Watch on. It will. It will for the day.
And then you strap on it. You're like, this is it.
This is it.
Still butt naked.
If I'm throwing on the G-Shock, I'm doing it. You know, like that's. I'm traveling or something. I need the world time. I need all those different things. But
thanks for not making eye contact while talking about being naked.
No, we can look at me personally. No. The watch, man, the icebreaker for men, it really is, and it's just a thing of taste. You could be wearing like a sweatsuit outfit, you know, but you got something nice on or whatever, and it just changes the outfit,
And I've heard it spoken of in the past for sure about how like the watch is the one accessory that is socially acceptable for a man to sort of embellish in. Because if his shoes are too nice and outshining everything else, or out expensing everything else he owns, it's kind of gaudy. Or
Fun fact as well. I'm watch nerd here. If wristwatches were only for women, men wore pocket watches, women wore wristwatches.
Yeah.
And then as the railroad standard came about after multiple really dramatic railroad accidents that happened, and as wristwatches became more affordable, and after they were issued during World War II, it became socially acceptable for men to wear wristwatches. But men wore pocket watches for a long time, and women wore wristwatches. So even that's changed through the culture over time.
Well, I mean, war does change culture.
They're
effective. Really, you know, like even the concept of the watch being. Men started wearing watches in warfare because they needed it for its use, and they wore them on the wrist because having a wrist or a pocket watch jingling about in your
Well, that and you know, they say the regs are written in blood, right? And so like the quality of a watch and the standard of a watch quality was based around multiple railroad accidents that killed tons of people because one guy had a watch that was 5 minutes off, or one guy had a watch that was 5 minutes ahead and behind, and so then they crashed. And so that's what established the standard for watches that said it had to be 24 joules and it couldn't be adjustable in this way or that way, and you know, all these different regs that came about for watches, because it was a life-saving tool at the time, and that was almost exclusively its use case. But of course, then to have a watch like during the Civil War, a pocket watch or whatever, was a symbol of status and things like that. And now even the way you wear it, it's always been interesting to me that even out of the service you wear it in. Obviously you wear wear it in to decrease the glare. Like that was where that came from, so that the glare on your watch wasn't out. I always thought it was an interesting choice that you kept it that way. Of course, it's what you're comfortable with. But I'm a right-handed. I wear my watch on my right hand. I never ever could have worn it on my left.
Wrong.
Yeah, wrong, right? I know. But I think your way is wrong. Even that
I'm
is in
left-handed and wear it
itself.
on my left hand.
Yeah,
Really?
me too.
Yeah. See, so but the watch thing is like even less of what kind of watch or what status of watch, even how you're wearing it tells me everything about you. Wearing it inboard, you're either a tryhard or you actually did shit. You know? So definitely the prior, yeah. So
I just saw cool pictures of cool people and said I'd do what that guy
yeah.
yeah,
Just
no,
follow my boot camp instructions.
you had one? I just had some dude who yelled at me wearing a funny hat.
Yeah.
I don't remember that too well. It was a weird time. No, and the other one too is so that when I'm writing, I take my watch off and I put it in front of me.
Yeah.
So like it's one thing I really like about writing in that sense is set a time limit and just write for that whole time limit and then put it away.
That's cool. I like that. I take that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, welcome back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. If you have writer's block, set a time limit and write until you're out of time.
Yeah. Cool.
And with a time limit, writer's block goes
And
away.
if you want to be cool, buy a wristwatch.
Writer's
Yeah.
block.
Yeah.
Every man
Want
should
to
have
be
a
classic by a pocket watch.
Yeah.
I don't. The pocket watches try to.
Seems.
I don't know.
Can I
It
just
seems
pull
like
a
a
pocket
good
watch?
time to start making like.
I
random
wear a pocket
pockets on
watch
my
on a regular
pants.
basis. I have a
And then
pocket
just, like,
watch. Yeah.
Well,
They still make the little. Okay, what is the little pocket on your pants for? Is that a coin
no,
or
it's
is that
for a
that's
pocket
for
watch.
pocket-
Yeah.
It still exists.
It
to
still
this day.
exists to this day. And that's actually why I got into pocket watches, because I was buying a whole new wardrobe. I wear a uniform typically every day. Like I'm at SHOT Show and being comfortable on flying, but Monday through Friday I wear a uniform. That uniform that I had a watch pocket in it, and it really bothered me that I didn't have a proper watch to put in it. So I went and found a pocket watch to put in it and wear that watch when I wear that uniform.
That's cool.
And it just feels so good. And you know, you could keep dual time too. Like you wear a wristwatch, so your wristwatch is your day-to-day time. The pocket watch is secondary or whatever. There's a reason for two watches, but like I'm not gonna Rick Ross 2 watches, you know.
'Cause that would be
So
very
double.
That would be ridiculous, you know. But yeah, watches in general are just fascinating
That
pieces of the Industrial Revolution and everything that came before and after it. The watch is like the sticking point, but Polaroids, sentiments, and everything else.
I believe I'm required to say Industrial Revolution and its consequences, but that's just an option.
Yeah, yeah, and its benefits. That's the balance. Of the
We
world,
now
right?
live and die by
I
our
was gonna
wristwatch
say,
instead of
true, yeah.
sleeping in the
Time's a
house.
construct, man. Take
Industrial
your watch off.
Instead of meandering home from the meadows to
Yeah.
our cottage.
What are you wearing, by the way?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Also saying.
Also
So,
singing,
yeah.
and you?
Campbell.
Campbell? Okay, alright. Okay, so we got a core, a Campbell, 2 Sangins, a Victorinox,
Torn
and a Tudor. Alright, cool.
tutor.
There we go.
Contrarian. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
that's a nice. I would love to have a Sangin. I wish that they would, stop doing drops. Be a watch company, not a
Yeah.
drops hiding company. You know.
Still not. I think this is one of those companies again that just hasn't been able to fully capacity yet.
Still very small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it still is.
No, they make great stuff. I just, I sit here
Oh,
saying
trust
I
me,
wish
I-
they wouldn't do drops, but all I do for GRIDBASE and base station is drops. So like, I completely understand.
Yeah, glass houses.
Glass houses. Yeah, no, I completely understand. But yeah, I'm sure. Well, yeah, man, fuck. Maybe people feel that way about the base station. I'd love to get one, but they just do hype drops.
That is. I mean, that's one of my pet peeves with the industry is that there's so many companies that call themselves companies, but then they never actually set themselves up to be
Yeah.
a long-lasting company. They're kind of there because they see a quick
People
cash
choose-
grab.
For me,
People
it's a
accuse, like,
resistance. It's a
spurious of
resistance
that.
to take an influx of cash. Like I could have it, to scale it the way that I would want to scale GRIDBASE. I could do it, but it would take because of the scope of what GRIDBASE is. It would
Yeah.
take investment. Well, if
Right.
I do investment, then I trade equity and I trade control. It's really important to me to either find an investor that I trust to have that control, which I haven't found entirely yet, and I've dated 20 of them. Or to holding on to me and everybody's going to support me while we do these drops until we get to that point.
Right.
But actively building other products and other things to try and, with Pocket, I don't do drops like that. Pocket's available all the time. But the base station, I just can't reasonably sit down and make it and send it out to you in a reasonable time. So I do it in these seasonal drops. you know, but it's just know that it's from an aspect of protecting the company, because I could have taken investment from the first month that I started GRIDBASE and then compromised the values that GRIDBASE stands for and had somebody else have control over this. And I just refuse.
That's an interesting part that does. So we talked about the industry side of things. That's where the consumer and the industry are disconnected, because the consumer only sees, I want the consumable right now.
Right.
Versus
their frustration in it.
Yeah.
Or their
frustration.
Because there is the now, and then there is the frustration that they're always feeling like you're keeping up the now.
Yeah, and then the industry side of it is like, yo, these, like, we don't just poop these products out. Like,
right.
I can't just shit this thing for you.
Right.
Like, if I could, trust me, I would, because then I would have more money. You know, like, so people, and you get the like duality of people's thoughts of like, with what's common today of like, oh, all businesses have insurance.
Right.
You know, all company owners just want to make money. Like, yeah, no shit, dude. Like, that's
capitalism. What are you,
like,
communist?
Well, and also too, it's like, okay, well, like, if they're not making money, they're not making the product you want, and if things can't make money, the only things you get to buy from are the same mundane things that we all complain about to begin with. Like, you know.
I think,
imagine trying to find what we like at Walmart. Like, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And I think some of that comes to the way that we've kind of conditioned our approach to a lot of the industry, both from within and from without, is that when there is this desire for innovation, and I've heard that for a long time. And so, like, I was looking I'd asked a question on Instagram about what were some of the things that people were looking for from SHOT Show this year, and innovation came up, and the point on that is like, and to be clear, I do hear that often, and I think the hunger is legitimate, and I think where we're at, and what I'm seeing from there is, how do we refine that desire for innovation, and innovation into what? Because, like, what do you want? Do you want a gun that has a faster rate of fire? Do you want something that shoots a higher caliber at a lower rate of fire? I mean, are all these kind of questions, right? And so
people just mean more convenience, I think, when they say that.
I
want turnkey solutions that require no work. I think that's what code word for innovation is.
I would love that in all categories of life, except for then you start running into, like, my labor no longer has meaning to me, and we could go down that spiral for a while. However, what I've observed in innovation, in my first deployment, I was carrying an A1, like a 3 MOA gun. Right. I was a special operations guy in Ranger Battalion on my first deployment with a Colt M4 that had a 3 MOA barrel in it. And now people are taking a sub 1 MOA barrel for granted on an AR-15, and while that isn't sexy, that's innovation. That Daniel Defense can create a cold hammer forged barrel that lasts 40,000 rounds, one after another, and while it's not cheap, it's available.
Right.
And then, so those are pieces of innovation. And then the other side of it is that, I think the criticism that is labeled at the commercial side of the industry is that a sense of purpose is replaced by this idea of something new, and a sense of motivation is replaced by a sense of urgency. So that urgency creates the need for something new. I'm not really sure where I'm going. I'm struggling with something right now. I'm working through a difficult mental problem that has to do with identity and direction. But you know, it's easy. I can buy a new pouch and put on my plate carrier. Does it make me
what a curveball.
does it make me a better person? No, but it does assuage the pain a little bit. I bought a sim pouch from Garand Thumb in multicam black so I could put kidnapping hoods in it, because I was like, one more thing in the toolbox. You're not wearing it, it doesn't count.
So, my take on innovation is true innovation, unsullied by this corporate capitalistic greed and fear-mongering and all this. It's, at its core, real innovation is solving people's actual problems.
Yes.
And if you solve someone's problems, they're willing to pay for your solution. And so I think what we've reached, though, is we've kind of reached this point of diminishing returns for a lot of these companies. We make sub 1 MOA barrels. It is commonplace, right? And now
How
it's
many
like
sub-MOA shooters do we have?
ooh. So
Church.
this
Just
is
saying.
Take them to church, Colin.
Just saying. No, I'm just,
yeah.
that's,
like
that's where people do look at it. Like they want it to just solve an issue that has a learning curve. And like I mean we talked about with ham, we talked a little bit like the learning curve of learning ham is hard, and it doesn't help that there's the perceived caustic
toxicity around amateur radio
of
right.
trying to get into amateur radio, and specifically if you have any inkling that the government is not doing anything for your best intent, that turns FUDs of ham
Right.
very fast to be like, yo, get away from me,
Right.
because I don't want you like saying some weird shit on my radio.
Yeah.
But it's like, but it's weird. It's because I would love to be able to just pick up that knowledge of ham, but I can't necessarily. Like, it is a very much, like a lot of those technical skills are a very much hands-on thing, and even if people learn shooting by themselves, a lot of it isn't just solely by themselves. It's from watching and observing, or being able to like actually shoot with other people. One person says one thing that just like lights a light bulb in their head, and they're like, holy shit, why didn't I think about it like that?
I want to ask a question to all of you that, we're talking about innovation and stuff here. What's a company that you would have wanted to see here that you know about that maybe is so small that I think it's appropriate to give them a platform to say, like, I wish so-and-so was here, or I hope to see so-and-so here next year. Like, for me, I can say that Radio Made Easy, Evan Dixon of Radio Made Easy, I hope he's here next year.
Yeah.
I firmly believe he'll be here next year. I think what he does for what we've been talking about with amateur radio, I think he bridges that gap excellently, and I want to align myself with him in every way possible. And a lot of other people do too. That's why he's doing stuff with Fieldcraft Survival. It's why he's doing stuff with Black Rifle Coffee, and he's excellent, and he's humble, and he deserves it, And so that's one person I think that I want to see here, but I'm curious to know who else y'all think should be here next year, or who you would like to see on the innovation aspect.
So I don't have a specific person, but I have a kind of a category or a gap in the market that I think there's going to be an opening for over the next couple of years, and it's guys who start and take like this financial risk of starting training facilities.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's very hard for most guys, because we're kind of entering this era of guys want to start getting into training more. They want to start getting into group training, and this often requires, if you want to take it, you want to run a class at somewhere, you kind of need, it'd be nice if we had a shoot house or a ballistic range, a ballistic shoot house range, and it's extraordinary. There's that barrier to entry for that all of a sudden gets extremely high. You're traveling out of state. If you're lucky enough to be there, it's booked out for a year, or it's exclusive to LE only.
And it's very much on all accounts.
Exclusive to LE only is not a minor point.
And that's not
That's a major point.
It's a major
It is
point.
a diminishing factor heavily.
It's getting better.
It's access to a shoot range. The indoor shoot house is the hardest. Or
Yeah.
what I mean by indoor shoot house is any sort of shoot
And
house.
to be fair, it
Or
is
more
one of those
long
few
range
things
ranges
that,
as well.
Yeah,
Like,
depending on
long
state.
range.
Yeah.
Yep, and it all depends on the state. There's a lot of dynamics that play into it, but I mean, out west, if you live in a western state, you have this huge luxury of public land, which is very, very, it's a luxury that everyone out west takes for granted.
Yes.
If you're Midwest, East Coast, everything's private for the most part, and so and it's extremely, like, the margins for running a training facility are very tight. And I think it would be really cool to see someone kind of take that model and flip it on its head. It's going to take people who have capital and who have investment and find land and put infrastructure into it. But the whole, private ownership and renting out for ranges is kind of how that model seems to be working now. And if there's a way for someone to take a concept of crowdsourcing and funding community-based, like take the community garden idea, but turn that into a training
Infrastructure for training.
Infrastructure for training. And training for alt, it can become a hub for your ham classes, for
Sure.
your not just
the
shooting,
range stuff,
but like
but
just
a
a
wide scope
just a facility.
place.
It's I think we're gonna see that start to pop up more. There's a guy local to me who's been trying to do it, and it was really heartwarming and also heartbreaking at the same time. This guy poured tons of money, took tons of personal risk, and then when the sim ban came through from the ATF, it instantly just killed it. Like, he literally the next day announced we're closing shop. Like,
Wow.
because if sims aren't there, he lost his police training contract with the local PD, the sheriff department.
Right.
He couldn't get the sims anymore, and so it was just kind of we're gonna see some, like, where there's this is all I'm kind of being everything I've been saying is kind of pessimistic, and it seems like there's a ton of barriers, but this industry has definitely showed me that, like, where there's a will, there's a way, and where there's demand, a solution will come up.
Rise,
Whether that's
someone's gonna figure it out.
Whether that's, I mean, one of our guys at Modlite today got to demo a virtual augmented mixed reality training where you literally stand in your bedroom and it turns it into a shoot house and you're using a real rifle.
Right.
And are we heading down that where it's like a technological solution?
Right.
Or is it actual? It doesn't solve our community problem though, and I think that's a core part where actually getting people into the same room together is good. So that's something I want to see.
Yeah.
It's not. I think that as we've talked, like we said in our first segment, this culture is shifting towards a more tactile, more in-person, skills-based movement.
Right.
I think it's a need that there's a huge gap for it, because if you want to go take a class from, with you and your buddies, and you need a shoot house, or you need a 3-story facility or something.
You're saying Tarkov is not an acceptable substitute.
So, I mean, but hang on. So, but I mean, we see this, like, look what the guys at Dirty Civilian just put out. I mean, just a couple of days ago, a video about, like, using, gaming as a way for. That's how desperate this community is for getting together and training.
You're saying COD Mobile is not realistic.
I just saw.
Here's
the crazy.
Yearn for the pack, Collin.
So, I mean, we see this.
No more jokes from him.
We see this, and I'm like, the problems there, the obstacles are very real, but like the demand is going to get more and more and more, and I think if I had to bet, I think we'll see more facilities start to pop up.
Good.
That's my hunch.
So the two things in that one of them, I saw a YouTube short that came up on my feed of a guy using Counter-Strike to explain cover and depth. Everyone knows what I mean by cover and depth? The closer you are to a piece of cover, the more you get exposed.
I know exactly.
Yeah, it's like it was like all the rage in like 15 and 16, but it's a concept that's especially
like
particular
here
in
versus here.
how close you are to cover.
You're talking about
Peeker's
advantage.
Peeker's
What
advantage.
they call it in Counter-Strike.
Okay, well, I don't know what it's called in Counter-Strike. But this kid,
Counter-Strike nerd.
you get the achievement unlocked. But yeah, it's just I saw this video of this guy describing that if your character is closer to the barrier than the other player's character, then you're going to have to expose more of your body before you can make an effective shot than the other person. Whatever. Which is in classic CQB is cover and depth. It's I want to put an object between me and my opponent early, not late. Which is I'm not going to try to explain on the podcast, and I have no reason to believe that this guy was in any way affiliated with what we consider the gun culture. And in that answer, like, I would like to see a better presence from like Activision and major and gun like not gun but like some video game companies at SHOT Show.
Right.
I'd really like to see
That's
that.
Good.
Their market. I mean,
I'm sure they've got people there.
So many people
I'm sure they've got people there.
Well, they're scanning. They're LiDAR scanning like Faro packs and like the Spiritus Mark II and stuff. Like they're LiDAR scanning that and then putting that on characters in their games. So
Yeah, I'm very aware.
They're in touch with that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This watch is
There's-
ready or not.
Is it really?
Mhm.
I didn't know.
There's
Yeah.
legal annotations that I know that are stopping the direct bridge.
Really?
Yes.
Where are those legal annotations? Where are they coming from? From the guns? From the is it an issue for the manufacturers, an issue for the video game company?
It's an issue for the video game company.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Because think about their demographic. I don't want to say too many specifics.
Sure. We can draw
'Cause it was-
conclusions enough.
It
Yeah.
was a privileged conversation, I guess.
Sure.
But
not really. It's very public. It's
I mean, no, but
I get what you're saying. Yeah, for the specifics.
yeah,
Right.
Yes, it's very public if you draw that correlation. But I'm saying the privilege I had of having that conversation, I do not want to get in depths of.
Right.
fair. For the sake of today's conversation, it's not.
But it's
appropriate,
it's
I'm
an
sure.
easy bridge to.
Hey, what do we
correlate.
say at dinner? What's understood
Yeah, doesn't have to be said.
doesn't have to be said. Yeah.
So-
New merch line that's
Hey,
just
hey.
yearn
I
for
mean,
the pack and what's understood ain't gotta be
so-
said. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that gaming is still going to be a cheap substitute for, like, it can only do so much. It can be, I think it can totally be a tool, especially for communication and training, all that stuff. But it doesn't fix, like, getting guys into a room. This podcast would not be the same if we were all sitting on a Zoom call.
Straight up.
So
Yeah.
even though we would be doing the exact same thing, we're
Right.
only talking to each other,
Yeah.
right? It's not the same.
No.
It's not the same at all.
Right.
And so I think we all would like to say, like, on paper, it sounds great. Oh, like Activision made a game where I can, in VR, like, do CQV with my buddies.
Right.
Like, okay, that might be fun, but is it really going to be the same? And is it really giving you the community? Like, oh no, we actually all live in 8 different states,
Sure.
and like, I'm never going to see this guy.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
that's not community.
Yeah.
And I think that's one weakness that we have where.
I think too we'll see more people leveraging these people that have these resources even in these private states where we don't have the kind of land that they have on the West Coast. The guys that own the private land would love, to a certain extent, with a high level of vetting, to have people on and practicing that stuff to develop protection for their land or whatever in the sense of community. And so even where we lack the public land and the ability to train, or even where we lack the money to develop training facilities, when we get down to developing community like that, that's going and talking to that guy.
Yeah.
And that's going and
You're
saying,
right,
and that's saying like, hey, we want to support you, and we want you to support us in this way, And so to what you said earlier, which is that where there's a will, there's a way in this industry. And so even if the money is lacking and the public land is lacking, there's no substitute for boots on the ground going and knocking on a door, even at the risk of being met with a 12 gauge.
Yeah.
So, well,
That's the trust aspect comes into it too. It's like
vetting.
Again, the vetting. That's where people don't. That's where people get turned off from sitting down and talking, or like almost everyone in this room, outside of Tom, for geographical and the way our relationship started through work, like. Justin's a little weirder because I drove like 5 hours to his house to meet him for the first time. I got there at like 1 o'clock in the morning. He's like, "Just don't steal my stuff, bro." It's like, I promise you, I won't drive this far to steal your stuff. Like, but like the conversations that start it aren't always as glamorous as people want to get.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate, and people think that
Yeah.
there is no reason why they should have any doubts about me since I have the same equipment as them, or they don't have night vision, or like insert whatever metric you want to have people qualify themselves by. But like, I'll be honest, I vet people hard before I go to the range with them.
Yeah.
Why? Because I don't want to waste my rounds.
Dude,
I don't want to waste my time. I only have so much limited time to do this type of stuff. that I don't want to find myself standing there.
Worse.
I've done this before.
Worse, dude. I trained a communist.
Yeah.
I trained a communist. I had no idea. We went to the range with a buddy, and he's like, my friend's gonna come. I was like, cool. So, like, I'm not one to train anybody or anything, but I definitely know basic handgun fundamentals. And so we're sitting there drilling basic handgun fundamentals, right? And I didn't talk to this guy at all or whatever. My buddy I've known for over a decade, so I'm like, it's all good or whatever. And we're done training and, like, hanging out and whatever. And he's, like, a full-blown communist. And I was like,
Wow.
Never again. Like, never again will I ever do that without heavy
Doesn't
vetting.
it feel like, and that's where, like, I'm guilty of it, of being wrong in vetting.
At least you vetted.
So, did you guys all see that story of the Chinese nationalist?
Yeah.
Who was just
Yes.
caught, and he's a SF guy for
Yes.
China, and he came in and took
all the training
2
courses.
years of classes, like back to back to back, and then he left, and
Took it all back.
that sparked a very interesting conversation
Yes.
in a lot of comment sections on Instagram recently of gatekeeping and how much should we be vetting and how much information should be taught, and like raging back and forth of like the gatekeeping guys are like, see, this is why we can't, you gotta,
Yeah.
we really shouldn't have all these classes being offered to civilians.
Yeah.
And the other side being like, they were gonna find out anyway. And
Fair enough.
that's a really,
Like,
I'm opening a can of worms here.
It's no,
Definitely.
It's like
I've touched a nerve.
no, it's almost like you've made me frustrated because it's like the conversation that I can't seem to get away from.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's and when I say that, like I am 100% like.
Well, because community and
But I'm-
gatekeeping, you're
I
just
am,
like.
I am
who do
guilty
you let
like
into
a dog
community?
returning to his own vomit in the sense.
Well,
To be
Here's
Old Testament. but-
Here's a good example of like we've seen fairy tales and fairy tale villages in like movies and like whatnot, but like at one point in time, Luke and I have joked about this, but at one point in time, people were literally living in villages,
Right.
and there were people in the villages who were useful and contributed and did things that were good that intrinsically made the life of the village a lot better, right? And then you would have people who were in the village, born and raised there, but they were the drunkard.
Right.
And they
I
were
met
the
a town drunk in Ukraine, and
Yeah.
they were just like, he was lit. The town knew he was a small town. They literally knew where he was, and there was like they would just find him passed out everywhere.
Yeah.
They said it's an anomaly if he's sober by 10 in the morning, and they would just find him and they would shuffle like they'd find him passed out somewhere, and they'd just pick him up and they'd move him somewhere where he wouldn't freeze to death in the winter.
Right.
They throw him in there. And then he'd wake up and he'd go right back to it. He said it was his craziest thing.
Back to the gatekeeping community thing, real quick. Something I just thought of was that we can't let one bad actor spoil the bunch. You know, how many people benefited from those classes and whatever. It's real easy when you're looking for red to see red, and so all those people saw the one guy that took the class, that took it back to the CCP, and were like, see, this is why we need a gatekeeper or whatever, you know. And it's like, okay, well. Yeah. That can happen. I mean, when you're scaling something, you just cannot filter out 100%.
Yeah.
So that can happen. Do I think that the one CCP guy that came into classes, is he gonna like create the downfall of America? No, absolutely not. Not even kind of. So it's like, all right, take it all.
What's more dangerous, risking training
one guy or training thousands of people to be capable hands? And I never heard that argument online. I never heard that argument online about that. You know, nobody that didn't rise to the top of that. You know,
it sounds like the risk of
community's more important than gatekeeping every time.
Absolutely.
I don't always think the rational conversation rises to the top of the comment section. Honestly,
you know, and that's intentional. I intentionally agitate. I want engagement. You know, so I mean, I'm not even going to sit here and say that I don't do that. I will post a photo of a Triumph Perk 152 clone that's an absolute garbage radio, and I will say in the description of the radio that it's a garbage radio, with the fact that I know that people aren't going to read the description and then blow up the comment section and that this is a bow thing in a waterproof box or whatever. So like I instigate some of that, because you just have to. That's the game to be played, and I will play it. But I think when it comes to like real serious shit about like training a Chinese communist person on like SF tactics, you know, the point needs to be made that like, okay, so we got one bad apple.
Well, and that's an interesting one too, because you have all these issues in tension. Like when I was younger and I was kind of looking at some of the conversation around masculinity, especially the way masculinity was treated in the West. This was right as the whole toxic masculinity thing was coming up. At the same time, there was this cry for a rite of passage. You know what a rite of passage is? Gatekeeping who don't pass the passage. It's very simple.
Right.
Like a rite of passage is you either make it or you don't.
Yeah.
And my own personal story on this one is that when I got into Ranger Battalion, the time that I went in the course that I took, RIP, the Ranger Indoctrination Program, was one time where they said this is the standard, but for lack of better words, fuck it, you're all going through. Early part of Obama's presidency, where I get in, I have been mentally and emotionally and physically preparing for this course, this indoctrination program, and I'm not saying that it was easy, but it wasn't what it was. I did not get the rite of passage that I was promised. I got this sort of,
here you go,
whatever, you know, it wasn't bad. Like, it's certainly, but whatever. And what came after that was devastation. Why did I do this to begin with?
Yeah.
Why am I even here?
Right.
You know,
Relating that back to training courses.
Relating that back to training courses and gatekeeping is, you know, the thing that we don't want to do is, and I don't think will take place, but occasionally it will within small groups, is say a course by a certain instructor is now the rite of passage. Oh well, if you haven't taken it from, you know, Xi Jinping training group, you're not a real, you don't know.
Yeah.
Or you're, you know, because it's
You
like,
haven't been trained by the counter trainer yet.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So like there's all
Right.
these, and those are all things that are going to pop up and, you know, they're going to get squashed and whatever. But the problem with the gatekeeping thing is you have this elitist mentality, and then you have resentful people, and then you have a rite of passage that exists with intention of it has to be legitimate.
Yeah.
And what I think people are saying is that the rite of passage that you're demanding of me is not legitimate.
Sure.
It's not good.
Well, organization and community. You know, organization and community can prevent and can prevent bad actors from being involved. Organization and community can create innovation and new products and new things that we need, you know. And so the thing we need most for going forward, as I see it, is organization and to quit chasing red herrings of, you know, people are trying to get you distracted here or there about SHOT Show's new product here or there or whatever. Sure. And so, you know, to stay focused on the organization and on the community that you're trying to build and going and talking to your neighbor and going and doing all of that, it creates everything that we've talked about in this conversation.
Yeah. Something that was really interesting that was brought up by Jared from Orion Training Group, a class I was at with him. It was his closing out the class, and he is like, okay, so you guys have to keep, you know, doing what you learned in this class. You should be finding guys to train, you know, connect with the guys who took this class, keep training with each other, et cetera, et cetera. But he said, you know, that he gave some very interesting points in that kind of direction. Like, okay, so organizing your training into, he was like, it's not even a bad idea to start, you know, even an actual organized nonprofit that actually has like meetings in minutes, and he's like it's going to add this layer of kind of artificial, you're going to feel like I just wanted to go shoot, but structuring it in a way that you're like, no, we're actually we're not some boog boy up in the hills, right? And we put a level of legitimacy to and structure, and he was saying, you know, if you guys are training and you go and you file a nonprofit, and you guys all go take, you know, medical courses, all go get your CPR certs, your EMT, you know, if one or two you go get your EMTs, one of you gets becomes a comms guy, and then you take that you take your little organization and you approach your local sheriff, right?
Right.
And you're like, hey, we are an asset for you
Yeah.
to rely on in a time of crisis. You're like, here's all the skill sets. Here's everything that we've done. Look, we have organized. We have minutes. Here's our meetings. You can
Right.
review it all. Like, be an open book to them.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are not going to be like, and this is where the community is so fractured, right? Because we're going to have like, what, you would go to the enemy? And you're like, come on, bro.
Yeah.
Like, this is...
Well,
Like-
the problem with that is you don't know who your enemy is. Let's be completely
This
frank
is where
on
this
that
is where civics becomes an issue.
one. Exactly.
So local civics, your
Yeah.
sheriff is a local civics issue.
Yeah.
And this is why we have to be well-rounded in our approach to all things.
Mhm.
We're being out organized, right? Where most gun guys are less involved in their sheriff selections
Mhm.
than they're more obsessed about what MOA the Daniel Bear is,
Right.
and they can't tell you who's running for sheriff from their
Or go to
county.
the city council budget meetings or whatever.
Right,
yeah.
right. So there's a
Maybe a more critical approach to that is they're more aware of what lawsuits the Firearms Policy Coalition is involved in than their sheriff. Because those are two things that are I would rather be up to date and participant in supporting or whatever what the FPC is dealing with in say a brace ban than I would be just forking cash over to the NRA and then only voting in the election once every 4 years.
Of course, yeah.
But the other side of that too is those are not being up to speed on the movements of a brace ruling does not equivocate being participant in my sheriff selection.
Right.
And I'm guilty of that. I certainly am.
Yeah.
And it all, I mean, we all talk, like, when we say community is synonymous with local. Local means your, immediate civics. It's intrinsic, I mean, it's so closely tied. It's like
Definitely.
the guys that Betsy on the city council has more sway over how much training you can do than the NRA does.
So yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's a wild, guys don't really realize that.
I am involved in my civics in my town, and it actually came. So because I'm involved in like the hacker open source space, a lot of people were really grifted by the fact that I was selling open source stuff, even though what I'm doing is totally legal and there's no issue with it. Just culturally, they felt like it should be gatekept, and I should be doing that.
Marcus deals with the blockchain.
Straight up, right?
Yeah.
So I deal with a similar kind of hate from that crowd. Not as much anymore since I've grown, but in the beginning I had a lot of hate from them. And they were putting out swatting, like they were trying to swat me. But because I go regularly to the city council meetings and because I have my sheriff's personal phone number, I was able to reach out to him and say, hey, I think that I may be the subject of a swatting attack at my house. Can you please put a note on my address? Can you do something like that to prevent that? He was able to do that, and then subsequently there was an attempt to swat my house, and they called me. And they were like, hey, just want to let you know. And they came by, and they called me, and they let me know. I'm like, we're all good here. Ain't no big deal. And so, even from an operational security standpoint of what you're doing, it's critical that you get involved, less just because of the community and everything else, but more you should just to be integrated in your community that way, because you could truly benefit from it like that. And certainly not everyone is subject to that specific thing,
Right.
but in any endeavor, I go to once a month, I go sit down, I get challenge coins, we hang out and we talk about what's going on with the immigration crisis or whatever, to sit and talk, and I get my finger on the pulse of what's going on, how many car thefts were there, and I just ask, how was the freeze, how was the weather, and whatever, and to get that knowledge about where I live helps me make informed decisions for my family about where we should be, where we shouldn't be, and what kind of things to expect. And so there's a real value in that. There's a very much a value in being involved in
a
civics.
very unhinged statement to that.
Go ahead. Rip
Building
it.
zoning codes were
Are you
designed.
about to Marvin Heemeyer me right now?
Building zoning codes were designed to destroy the village.
Okay. Yeah.
Because what makes an
Yes.
actual, what makes
Yes,
a
they
community?
were.
Because if you're surrounded by a bunch of houses and you have to drive every single where,
Yeah.
what's the likelihood of you knowing the person behind the counter that you're buying your food from?
Certainly, especially in
But-
comparison
and-
to Europe and
and-
how their centers are
I want my
squared away.
sweatshop in my backyard. You guys can't do that?
Yeah, well, that's considered child labor, which is legal for your children. But
And we all know the consequences of what it took from us. It took the mines from us. But no. But
So-
back to the village idea, though. I'm prefacing this with a joke, but the realisticness is like how many places in America today have a structural community that is sustainable on its own, that is not getting pumped with outside supplies from somewhere else.
Right.
That's like non-existent in the United States.
Certainly
outside of churches.
Outside of churches.
or rural areas.
But I have another.
Rural areas have their issues, but yeah.
Well, like, so we have a property
No,
in.
it's not rural areas. Rural areas don't have it either.
We have
Yeah.
we have a
They have-
property in southeastern Oklahoma that my mother-in-law stays at, and we have a garden, and everybody trades. And I'm talking about $5,000 worth of freezer full of meat for groceries. I mean, that is the culture in our property.
See,
where
there's,
we're at.
there's pockets of it, but like
I live on a street where
by
it's
and
very
large.
much like that, where somebody trades a 5-gallon bucket of honey for
Yeah.
a side of beef, and then another guy trades a cord of wood for,
Right.
I'll help you build your deck, and
Yeah.
it's like
Those work. Yeah, no, I definitely see
that
by,
works.
by and large,
It
I'm
works,
saying think about it from the standpoint of like, if you look at old main streets of rural America, those were places that were not corporate. They were not they were getting the supplies from. Maybe there was a couple things that they had to bring in from somewhere else, but
Right.
they were
It was an
Actually-
event when the general store brought stuff from the other place. It was
yes,
an event.
Right.
yes, it was an event. They were
Mhm.
getting this stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, but in the meantime, they were able to subsist on all this other stuff. But we don't have those types of structures in place,
For
which
sure.
then makes it so much easier when you're, surrounded in a grid square full of,
Yeah.
1,000 people.
Yeah.
You all shop at the same local
You'd be
Cub
lucky to
Foods.
be in a grid square of 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd live in a little, grid square of 4 roads
Yeah.
that intersect or that go around it.
Yeah.
And then you all shop at the same grocery store, but like you're not gonna know the guy who lives on the other 5 blocks of that
For
of
sure.
that square.
Right.
Like,
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
so
So
it's where there's
But we have
there-
Facebook. We have
Yeah.
Facebook groups though. We don't
yeah,
need that.
exactly. But then you look at it from that perspective. Like people do think that now. Oh well,
Sure.
no, we can find our people in there. It's like okay, then you look at how spread out they are. But
Right.
that's like the physical I think I'm not trying to say this is never going to work, but the true thing that's going to be the biggest hurdle, in my opinion, is the fact that the way our structure and our infrastructure is in majority of people's lives is not it's not sustainable in its own manner.
You're right.
And
it's not
that is-
conducive to human life. It is
Yeah.
not at all. You don't know who's making your food. You don't know where anything is. You have no connection to it.
Right.
That your children grow up thinking chicken is made in the grocery store.
Right.
yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
I completely agree with you there.
So and then it builds a disconnect from that's where the entitlement comes into, because
Yes.
when I don't have to, if I can just again back to the consumer side of people who dog on every single thing that the industry does, good or bad, like when they dogpile on it, they don't know what goes into building a lot of those products. They don't
Right.
they don't know the size of the companies. They don't care to even look it up. Most of them don't. Most of the people who are the loudest don't even care to look them up.
Right.
And they're sitting there just throwing stones so easily while they're sitting on just stones. They're not even doing anything. And
You're not building a castle. You live on a pile of rocks.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting the interesting part is at some point in time there needs again, and how long-term wise, how is that fixable? Being involved in the actual community, that would actually require you to there's business laws that would have to. Everyone's looking. So the counter argument of what our arguments are is to build more structure, give more laws,
Yeah.
do more things.
I'm going to stop you there
going
because
anarchy.
I've been waiting to ask this question this entire evening, but I'm going to stop you there.
Okay.
And we're going to make sure everything else is all the cameras and everything's running, and then we're going to come back to that question because you're saying the solution is always out there.
What do you got right now?
And
You
I
got
no,
something?
bite your tongue. Go.
I'm not talking about complete anarchical, like dismantling of society so we can rebuild it.
No.
But the realisticness is, like you said, people are organizing better than this narrative that we have here,
Right.
right? And the only way that can be turned around is to get organized again and essentially roll back some of the nonsense. And I brought up zoning stuff just because, like, almost everyone lives in homes that, again, you can't walk to anything. They built infrastructure that is not conducive to an individual's life. You think about how much you have to consume. Again, not ecological standpoint, but just the overall amount of stuff that you have to do means that you continuously have to make sure you're making enough money to just do the basic things.
Yeah.
Right? Every little thing gets more expensive once you add a commute.
Right.
Everything like
Well,
Shot shows a great
and we're
example.
focused on personal empireship as opposed to communally owned spaces. And,
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, so I wanted to make the point that I'm not saying it's from an ecological argument that I'm making this. It's not from an anarchical.
Right.
Like, I'm not advocating for.
We're just stating facts.
I'm just saying.
However, people draw conclusions of that.
It's weird how we have these structures for housing, and like, don't get me wrong. There's zoning things that are good,
Sure.
like putting a coal plant next to a preschool.
Sure.
Probably not a good fucking idea.
Right.
But I think at one point in time they probably were thinking like, yeah, who would do that, right?
Right.
And now we have it. They're like, no, we got to put that on the books, and it's
Sure.
like, So what I'm saying is, in short, in order to kind of get back to the community that I think we all kind of agree that, like, we wish our neighbors were closer. We wish that, I brought it up before in a different talk that I've had, that we wish that if our house was foreclosing on and we were losing everything and there was an auction, a live auction at your house, your neighbors would come and beat the shit out of
Like how
anyone.
they used to.
Yeah, beat the shit out of any banker who came to buy it out from under you to rent it out,
Mhm.
We wish that was the type of life we had, right? Because that means that even though, and that's where the faults thing comes in, even though the town drunkard is the town drunkard, they still give a shit about that guy.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's weird. Like no one's happy about him, but they still take care
They're
of him.
still like, you're an idiot, but damn it, you live in my village, and I'm not walking out onto my porch and you being frozen to death.
Right.
Right.
There's an attitude.
Sorry.
So
But that's
this is
I wanted to
this is a perfect
finish that
segue.
point.
Perfect segue.
Yep.
What causes someone to care enough about their fellow human to not want to see them freeze on the porch? We live in a society where people walk past people on the street, and literally you can die on a sidewalk in New York City, and you'll be there for a day before no
Public
one knows.
executions, women getting raped on the not the tubes, but their version of the tubes. There are subways, people getting pushed in front of.
There's
Subway.
all sorts
Yankee?
of
What did you just say?
Sorry.
I called you a Yankee.
Yeah.
You called it too.
That's a
So-
huge thing.
So, there has to be a reversion to some sort of shared moral compass and value. Honestly, all this, I will be always the guy who comes on Forest Podcast and calls for return to Christ.
Yes.
Because
Amen.
it is the ultimate solution.
Yes.
Okay, we want community. Oh, but we can't have the community we want because society's rotten. Why is society rotten? Because people lost Christ. Oh,
Right.
well,
Well,
I mean,
society's rotten because
Ready
we were
for an
born with
easy
sin.
point?
Right,
Ready
right,
for
right.
an easy point?
Go ahead.
so
What was usually the center point of a village?
Church.
Church, absolutely.
church.
Or the bar.
Well,
I'm talking about archaeologically.
Yeah. Archaeologically, yeah.
hey, because when people move to a new area, one of the first things they do is they build a church.
Yeah.
And they built it so well, like because it was the often. But
Okay,
like,
so I just real quickly, GRIDBASE.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of architecture. I'm a Christian as well. GRIDBASE, as a name, no one knows this, is based off of the geometrical center. When they would build these cathedrals, there would, if you go to any of old cathedrals, which I have been in
Europe. Yep.
Okay, so there's typically like a giant, like a geometrical structure. All of the angles in that's what's known as the grid base. And that is what defines the angles for the church and everything else around it.
Yep.
And so it is the center hub that defines where certain things are going to be and how these angles are and whatever. And so, but they would build that first, then they would build the church around that grid base.
Yes.
And that was there. And the other thing is, that's been lost through time, is that geometry was sacred. If you knew math and you knew geometry like that, you were to be closer to God, because it was common people didn't have that knowledge. So to be able to understand degrees and to be able to be an architect like that and to build something like that meant that it was divine. It was divine of its own nature and its own structure. We take architecture for granted now because we have CAD and whatever, right? But at the time, you would build these grid bases.
We had brutalism before we had CAD. Yeah.
But then we would have these brutalist architecture is a whole other point. But grid base is centered around that idea of the center of the church and the base and of that architectural foundation and all of it. Yeah.
It's really neat to see. Now there's something that. So you were talking about the city center and how people, like the way that we orchestrate our society. This entire not the entirety of my life, but it's not the lightning rod, but it's like the rubber mallet that's just banging over and over and over again, is that so much of what I'm going to say is the gun culture is saying we need to do this, we need to organize in this way, we need to build this kind of stuff up. And what I'm really hoping to see is where that verbiage changes in like you and me and the people who listen, the people we talk to, goes from we need to here I am, send me. Now, I think what we've seen a lot in our industry, because we're here at SHOT Show, is that here I am, send me turns to here I am, pay me. You know, and that sounds like a shitty thing that like a weird pastor or youth pastor says. And you're like, oh, my youth pastor's a dweeb. But I like, and we see that happen so often. But there is that issue of here I am, send me. Like I am frustrated at the churches. How do I figure out how to build a better church? Like a more classic cathedral. I love your grid base analogy, or your community group, like. And all of these things, because you're going to run into that drama. You're going to run into people not liking it. You're going to create a group. You're going to get a bunch of people over. It's going to fail. Yep. But like, here I am, send me. We want change in our local elections. We want changes in our sheriffs. We want changes in our politics. We want changes in our community where they are more centered around good living. But our answer is always, we need to do it, and sometimes it's here I am, send me.
Yeah. The system is not broken. The way that people are manipulating the system is. You know, the system is not functionally broken. The change can still happen.
Now, you talked about that earlier. Can you explain that? And that'll be our final point of the night, the final thing that we're talking through.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to necessarily take the final point, but everything that, you know, we're all trying. This is one interesting fact about this, is that you can talk all around it, but you can't talk about it. You know, you really can. You can talk about every other aspect around it, but it really is you and how you digest everything we've spoken about and implement within your own life. There is no way to talk about that, because that's individual. And that is how God impacts your life individually, and how God calls you to do something within your community with the people around you. So we can talk about it and the circle of it and the nucleus of it as much as we possibly want to, but talking about the actual center of whatever it is impossible, because it is independent and solely upon God's calling to your life and what it means to you. And so I will hold no punches on the fact of my Christianity punches. You always bring God into the Redacted podcast. Me too. I'm here for that, you know. But what I mean by that is that from a political standpoint and from an action standpoint, we have the functional opportunity to make a functional change, and there's a lot of power in that other people don't have. Even our neighbor countries in Canada and Mexico do not have, and we still have that. And it is imperative, I believe, that we take this opportunity to not be apathetic and to say the system's broken, there's nothing I can do, when's the bullets fly, you know, like that's not, and we get to that point because the marketing says that, the marketing panders to that, and the marketing pushes that, and then that's what's pushed on Instagram, and that's what's pushed on Reels, and like that's what's hot, and so you have all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, like, it is our job as taste makers, if you will, to come in and say, let's not focus upon that, but let's focus on making an organizational shift within our own hearts and within our own communities to change the system using the tools that exist currently within the system that is not functionally broken. You can be involved in your sheriff's elections. It's not functionally broken. You can. Numbers show up, people vote, okay? Whatever happened with whatever votes, wherever the hell else, really doesn't matter. You know, but in your local village, if you want to begin treating it like that, it starts with how you're identifying. It starts with the way you're treating it. If you're treating it as it's this apathetic thing that can not be touched or changed or anything, well then surely that is what will become. That's what you're focused on. I'm a motorcycle rider. If you don't focus on the turn and the curve, you'll wreck. If you focus on the bend, that's where you're going to go. So we have to focus on what we want to see and not focus on what's lacking. Yeah. And so as we get closer to everything falling apart, as it were, we have to be less focused about it on falling apart and realize that even if it does, God has our fate in His hands. We have to be accountable, and we have to be good stewards with our time and with our words and with our resources. That's all we're called to do. We're not called to be or do anything else other than to be good stewards of what we've been blessed with. So if we've been blessed with a functional system that can be changed, we have every obligation to be able to implement that change. And if we've been blessed with the resources to start a range and to start a community, then we need to do that. And we have to start taking our stewardship really, really seriously. And we have to start taking our leadership role within that stewardship extremely seriously. You know, and to the apathy, I think, is the lack of taking your stewardship seriously.
Absolutely.
And
it's
so
the
nix the apathy, because I don't think that there was any verse in the Bible where God said, you know what, fuck it. Because that just wasn't the case. You know, and my God says fuck. So I don't know about yours, but mine says fuck, and I don't think He ever said fuck it. I think He said go and do and be a good steward and affect and make an impact. And the thing that I like about Christianity over all other religions, although they may have interesting aspects, is that Christ was the true north of how one should carry their life. And so there is no way to get lost if you're following the life of Christ. Whereas if you're in Buddhism or anything else, it's very easy to get lost into hedonism and other aspects of those religions, although they may have validating aspects of them that are of good nature or whatever. There's no true north. Christ gave us a true north. And to follow that true north is to say that let's follow the life of Christ and let's be good stewards with our time, the most valuable resource. And let's make sure that we're invested into positive changes within our community, whatever they may be. And apathy, there's no place for apathy here whatsoever. The system is not functionally broken. You know, and to consign your existence to some broken system that doesn't represent you, the disenfranchised, is outside of what I believe Christ has for you, because Christ is the one that's determining your life, and you have to be accountable to Him first and foremost, not any party, not any culture, not anything else. You have to be accountable to Christ first, and I think to do that you have to be a good steward with your time and resources, and I think the Bible is very clear about what being a good steward is. And I don't think there's really that much confusion about it, you know?
To your point and to what Forrest said, like, nobody embodies, here I am, send me, more than Christ.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
Very much so. I'm very excited this year because for many years being a Christian in the gun culture and the military was lonely. And now I'm seeing that change. And I'm not seeing that change because of something I did or something other people did. I'm not even going to go down to that one. It's like it is because it's not. It's in almost even a Calvinist sense. It's not by my power, but instead of getting into the hard theology of it, and so for I'm not going to say for the first time in my life, but one of the reasons why one of the things I'm very thankful of having you all on tonight is that this is a group of people that we all met through our own different industries. You guys, a bunch of you work for the same company. We've talked to each other. Some of you guys met through me, but that's just another node of people who've met people who've met people through people. And being a Christian in this industry is no longer a lonely thing.
No.
But many of us are. But we need to put the loneliness away and say, here I am, send me.
And even if to follow Christ is a lonely path, that's a righteous path.
Yeah.
If you're the only one.
These are the days of Elijah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even if, But anyway, yeah, I'm done preaching. Amen. Amen. Well, in the water.
You are from Texas. You are from Texas.
Forrest, as always, thank you. I wouldn't feel as comfortable out here at SHOT Show. Of course, if I hadn't known that you were out here, we've been friends first and foremost as my first quote-unquote industry friend, right? You've always been very welcoming. We've had plenty of conversations. So personally, I want to thank you for being out here. Of course, we're staying together in the same hotel, and I'm happy. Collin and I spoke before. Luke, this is our first time meeting. For those who are maybe listening by ear, there's two other guys on the couch that are excellent listeners, and I'm sure their wives are extremely happy women,
Not so much.
Yeah.
Why won't you shut up?
Yeah.
Trying to think about this
So they're
subject.
extremely happy women.
In my head.
I think
I
all
gotta
of you.
unpack it, but it's 5, 20, 30, 100 boxes deep,
Yeah.
and the solution is in a tiny one, but I don't think it's the solution, because if we look back at box 22, we see that this box is not really real.
Okay.
Average
Yeah.
conversation with Forrest.
Average conversation with Forrest. Yeah. Average conversation when I was 20 on mushrooms in college as well. But yeah. We
Roll 20. Roll a d20 for. I don't do
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know how that works.
Anyway, I just wanted to thank all of you, and like you said, like the first year at SHOT Show is weird because you don't know anyone, but I know next year we'll all get together, and I'm looking forward to that as well. So,
Absolutely.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for us. It's always a pleasure.
Let's just all wrap it up. Anything? What do you got a choice between dad advice, dad jokes? Dad advice, bad jokes, not dad jokes, so not John Lovell, or unhinged rants.
Let's start at that corner.
Dad advice.
First, are you a dad?
I am.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, number 2 on the way.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Spend time with your kids.
Yes.
Put the phone away.
Yes.
Spend time with your kids.
Yes.
You won't regret it, and your kids won't either.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Can I follow that up? About to become a dad next month. Don't spend time with your kids. You've got better things to do.
Wait, was that dad advice or unhinged jokes? I don't know.
It's a little bit of both.
Yes.
A little bit of crossover there.
Listen, I'm just saying there's a high percentage of people that find that the liquor store down the road is a perfectly suitable place for them, and cigarettes are just a mile away.
Well, as we found out this evening, not the cigarettes, but you get the point.
Your kids can never see the disappointment. Your kids can never see if you're disappointing them if you're not there. Yeah. That's saving them from something. Dad advice? Not qualified to give any of that. Unhinged rant. Surprising as it is in this world today, return to Christ. That's my unhinged rant.
Know your business.
Stole it.
Oh, you stole it?
I don't know. If I'm not a dad yet, I'll be a dad just after Tom here. But
Congratulations. Yeah.
I don't know. But to follow up on what Justin said about being more present, I'd say make and to follow up what you just said, make your spiritual life a priority. Take time every week to dedicate, and hopefully every day, but dedicate to prayer and meditation.
Amen. I want to say too, quit settling. Quit settling in your relationships with your friends. Quit settling in your relationships with your family. Quit settling in your relationships with the things that you think you like, whatever. Create a higher standard. polish your boots, show up on time,
Or watch.
you know, or watch.
Or
Yeah,
watch.
yeah. Quit settling. You can do better. Yeah.
Man, I really want to go on Hinge, but I feel a little sentimental.
Go off, son. Go off.
Sentimental's rare. Dive into the sentimental.
Let them cook.
With like in that industry regards, I think it's funny and sad at the same time. It's like a tragedy, comedy, drama unfolding in real time in front of you. If you are yelling so loud about the wrong things, the people down the hall are going to shut the door before you get there.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is if you continue to just make a ruckus without any meaning to it, people are going to shut their door to you.
That's a good word.
And is that gatekeeping or is that vetting?
Yeah.
That's for you to decide. But I think a lot of people want to feel heard, and it's today with a platform, it is easier to get heard, but make sure you're heard actually saying something worth a damn.
Yes.
Because a lot of people can bark, but not a lot of people can bark to alert towards something.
Right.
You don't like little dogs because they bark all the time,
Yeah.
but you like the hunting dog because he barks at the right
And it
thing.
matters. Yeah.
So just be sure which one you're gonna be, and don't get so sucked into feeling like you need to make noise in order to be heard. Sometimes it's better to walk silent.
Yeah.
Well, I asked the question, so I'm exempt from any of these. So I just get to go with the whole unhinged rant, and but I don't have one. I really don't.
That's for the next episode.
So I'll just go full sentimental. One of the things that I maybe it's not sentimental. This maybe is another one. It's probably where I'm going to burn a bridge. But you know, when you say that on social media, it doesn't mean anything. It's that, you know, sometimes people just want to go spend time with their friends, and go like, and that's what SHOT Show has been at in a sense of like, you said earlier. SHOT Shows a lot of times we just go spend time with people. I'm not original in saying this. Other people have said it too.
Yeah.
But
Original on that.
sort of, and some of the things is like, why do I go? Because everybody I know who's spread across this entire country all comes together. We all spend time with each other, and I get to see everybody face to face. And so, just because other people have a group of people that they spend time with, that they're doing their thing is, and you're not a part of it, doesn't give you license to be a dick to everything. And it doesn't give you license to just be annoying and or like believe that you have a right to participate in that. None of us are here because we have a right to be here. We are all here because of at some point in time we volunteered, or we figured something out, or we tried to add value to something. Sometimes it's as simple as getting a position. If you know anything about the gun industry, pay as shit. Friends are everywhere, enemies are everywhere, and you're just trying to figure it out all the time. But this has been a good. This is a first time of first time. So having this many people on at the same time, some of you have been on before, but I really do appreciate all of you guys risking your semi-trafficked experiences to come here, sit in my not living room, and listen to this conversation that we have. And as we go forward, like I look forward to future conversations with you. But it comes down to, in that voice from heaven, is it going to be, here I am, send me? Maybe it's to follow somebody, not follow like, click the button, but like to go help in something, to go contribute. And of all things, it sounds so petty. We put on we had this range cleanup day. Like, that was more fulfilling in that entire Q4 than any of the other things that we had done, just because like we did stuff. And so I'm saying, like, don't be afraid to volunteer. Just, it's scary as fuck, dude.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna get less.
Right.
So I'm not saying send it like, like an unhinged dirt bike jump off of a cliff, but just like do it. and
Yeah.
go volunteer. Here I am, send me.
Quit making excuses and make time.
Yeah, do you want 2024 to be better than 2023? Because 2023 was a shit year for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's you're gonna just go fall, pick yourself up and go.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
well, thank you all for coming on. I'm gonna I'll put links in below so people know how to find some of you guys on Modlite as well as GRIDBASE, and we will see you all soon. But thank you for being on the first and so far at this time biggest episode of the Redacted Culture Cast, as we are getting together and getting to know each other. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you soon.